Hey, what's good, people? Mr. Zensphere back again, here with another RENOISE tutorial. Continuing on with our basic beginners series, we are going to be looking at the pattern editor as well as the advanced editor, and we'll also be looking at the sample browser here today. We'll get started maybe making some beats or, assembling some notes together, make a little composition. But let's see. First things first, we talked about tracks and track architecture and how to group tracks, and we talked about pretty much everything in the pattern editor, except for these two fields right here. And these are actually quite important fields. This first one is our quantization field. This button turns quantization on and off. This is on, this is off. And this quantizes live recording. So if you arm the pattern editor and you press play and input some notes, oops, you have to be in a note column, that didn't work. And you hit some notes, you can see that these notes are all entering in on lines of 4, right? Because that's what this value is set to. We can set this to any value we want. But that is kind of what determines that quantization value when we are recording either from the keyboard or from a MIDI instrument, a MIDI controller when you're doing live recording. I obviously didn't have an instrument set up there. That's why we didn't hear anything. But let's just delete this, clear this out, and get our note columns back to 1. That's what this is all about. There are, I think, hotkeys for quantization value. I think by default it's Command Shift and your number keys. And you can set that up how you want in the preferences pane. We'll do a deep dive into the preferences and key commands and things like that in a future video. But for now, just know that that is something that you have key command access to. This next field over here is our edit step length, and this is also super important. Oftentimes in RENOISE, I mean, depending on how you use it, you may be recording live all the time. I don't know. I typically don't. I'm typically programming in my beats, programming in my notes, and this edit step determines how many lines are skipped between note entries. So we've got our recording armed. I'm just going to enter some C4 notes here. So I hit Q and it skips 4 lines each time because that's what we have it set to. Okay. Let me just clear that out. Okay, so that's what these are about. Command and number keys kind of by default will change your edit step value. I've kind of customized mine so that there are multiples of 4 and then I have multiples of 3. Over here, as well as 0. 0 is useful. Sometimes you want the cursor to stay put if you need to, make some micro adjustments or whatever. It can be useful for, like, say, inputting effect commands and things like that to have your cursor stay put. But most of the time, you're going to have your edit step set to something a little more functional. So let's see. I'm going to turn my quantization back on. It doesn't really need to be on, but I'm just going to turn it on anyway. And let's look at the sample browser and how we can get some sounds into RENOISE. So today we're just going to make a kind of basic beat. And let's navigate over to this pane here. This is our sample browser. And it's actually more than a sample browser. It's just our browser. So we can browse for songs, instruments, samples, and other. And other can include different things. Could be phrases, could be modulation sets, could be multi-samples, could be effects chains, you name it. You can set it up however you want. You'll see to the right-hand side, we have 4 preset buttons. And we can right-click to save the currently displayed path as a preset. So if you just love listening to demo songs, you could right-click on one of these numbers here and save that path I've got, you know, like my own stuff set up, stuff that I'm accessing pretty regularly. But that's what these are about. We have another 4 presets for instruments, another 4 for samples, and another 4 for other. So you get all those kind of fresh preset paths available regardless of what you're looking at. So this goes to your root directory. This is, what is this? This is volumes directory. And this is your home folder. This is your user library. And this is the kind of factory library. And if you have additional drives attached to your computer, they'll show up here. And you can access external drives or other, if you have multiple internal drives, you can access them over here. So for now, let's go to samples. And we'll go to the RENOISE library. And let's pull in a kick drum. So our navigation screen looks like this. We can search if we know what we're looking for. Search is just within the folder that is open. This button, what does this button do? I guess that just enables or disables the search field. This button will detach the folder so that you can kind of like browse and see things a little differently if that's what you want. There's a different way of doing it. I usually don't have it that way. I usually just use this up arrow. For me, that works well, but you know, your mileage may vary. And this button here will display, I believe it displays all files that are within the folder, regardless of whether it's the right file type or not, right? So if you had like some Photoshop documents in here and this button is activated, you'd see those come up as well. I usually just leave that off because I'm not looking for random shit. I'm looking for samples and songs and things like that. So we have this pre-hear option, which this button, when it's enabled, we can click on a sample and it plays. And we hear it, and we can audition that way. This is the volume slider for our pre-hear, and then we have some options for our pre-hear here. So we can pre-hear on the master channel or we can pre-hear on the selected track. I usually just pre-hear on the master because it gives you a clean listen without effects. And if you need to kind of like break the pre-hear, if you have like a large sample, I don't think any of these are going to be long because they're all kicks, but you can always hit escape when it's playing. The escape key will kind of cancel the pre-hear play if you've heard enough. Okay, so let's find ourselves a decent sounding kick here. And it can be whatever we want. I'm going to give this mouse focus so then I can use my arrow keys to listen. Let's use this one. Okay, so we pulled in a kick. We'll leave that as our first instrument, and then let's find a clap. So we'll find a clap. I like this wide crisp. And let's get some hi-hats. So you can use your mouse scroll wheel to, when you mouse over the instrument list, or, well, I guess it doesn't work on the sample browser, but when you mouse over the instrument list, you can use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down. There are lots of value fields like that in RENOISE where your mouse scroll wheel will come in handy. And you can mouse scroll wheel click to give mouse focus to any field. So if you click using your scroll wheel, you can then switch mouse focus or keyboard focus to that portion of the interface. Okay, so we are looking for, what are we looking for? We're looking for cymbals, which would be hi-hats. Let's find a, oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's find a closed hi-hat. And I'm going to bring focus back here so I can use the arrow keys. That sounds decent. You can just hit enter, and I'm going to navigate using the keyboard here, and we'll select an open hat. I'm sorry, in what universe is that an open hat? We'll go for modern here. And let's see. I think that's good to get started. So let's start creating a beat using our pattern editor here. So let's set our BPM to something that we want. We'll say 132. I'm going to set my lines per beat to 16 because that's how I like to work. And I am going to rename this first track Kick, so I know what is supposed to be on there. I'm going to make sure my cursor is on line 0 and that my kick instrument is selected. And I'm going to now look at my edit step. I want this to be 16 because my beats are 16. And I want a kick drum. We're going to do a little 4 on the floor beat here. I want it to be on every beat. So I'm going to use my key command and change that to 16. But you can also just double click and type in 16 there, or use these little arrows, or click and drag to slide it. As is usual in RENOISE, there are many ways of doing one thing. So next we want to look at our octave and see where our octave is. Generally C4 is the root note for samples. So I'm going to enter in a C4. I'm actually going to change my octave, so my Z key is now C4. Okay, so we got 4 on the floor. Kind of a shit bass drum, but whatever. I'm sure it's ancient. And I'm going to change my pattern length to 80. So we'll have 8 beats, and I'm just going to fill those all. Amazing. Okay, and let's put a clap on every other. So I want to make sure that my clap instrument is selected. I can go over here and click it with my mouse, or I can use Option and down to select the next instrument. You can also use your number pad numbers to select instruments. I usually don't, but you can do that if you want. All right, so we want a clap on every other beat. So we want to skip 32 lines, right? So I'm going to change that via my key commands. You might have to enter that manually, but I've got that set up because I do this all the time. Amazing. All right, I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Okay, so we got the start of a beat here, and let's change this to clap so we know what we're doing. And we'll change this one to closed hi-hat, CL hat. And we'll change this one to open hat, OP hat. Okay, and then for our closed hat, I think this is our closed hat. Yeah, that's our closed hat. Little typo there. Oh, this is useful. So when you have the pattern editor as your focus pane, you can use home and end keys to go to the beginning line or the end line of the pattern. That's kind of a handy way to navigate and useful to know. So now we want to put a closed hat on every 16th note, which would be every 4 lines. So we need to change this value to 4. So I'm going to do my key command and change that to 4. And then I'm just going to input 4 of these. And instead of instead of holding down the key to fill this, let's do a different method. So I'm going to put my cursor here. I'm going to hit Option A a couple of times to select all of these notes. Option A selects everything above the cursor, and Option Z selects everything below the cursor. So this is kind of a handy key command to know. We want to make sure that we select our instrument number as well. And then I'm going to hit Command C to copy, and then Command P to paste continuously. So then that fills the entire rest of the pattern with our hi-hats. Sounds kind of funny. Okay, so let's say I want to swing these hi-hats. I can do that with the global groove parameter, but let's look at doing it in the pattern editor since this video is about the pattern editor. So I'm going to open up a delay column. I'm going to do that by hitting Command-Shift-D, or you can do that by just hitting this little button down here. And Command-Shift-D opens our delay column, and then we'll offset the second and fourth notes here. So let's choose a reasonable value. Let's try like 6, and then we'll skip that one. You can skip using the delete key if there's nothing that you're worried about deleting. And I'm also just going to enable the block loop by hitting the Enter button on the number pad. And this block loop is too long. I want this to be 1 and 1/8. And then we can listen to this and see how our swing sounds, see how our swing feels. Okay, that's good. I maybe want a little more. I'm going to change my edit step to 8 so I don't have to keep hitting delete. So we're at 6 now. Let's try 8. Yeah, that's good enough. Good enough for government work, as they say. So there are a number of different ways to select sections of the pattern editor. And it's helpful to know different ways of doing it because different situations, different ways might make more sense. So you can hold Shift and drag down, and that will select basically everything in the track, I believe. Or you can go to your beginning point, hit Command B, and then go to your endpoint and hit Command E. And then you realize, oh, that's really actually a very strict interpretation. I want all of this. So you can go over here and hit Command E, and it will keep your beginning point and it will add to it. Okay? So that's another way. And then I also told you about the option A. Cycling through option A will give you first the instrument, and then the note column, and then effects column as well. We're going to copy this. We're going to go down one line, hit Command P once again, and now our delay value is propagated throughout this pattern. But we're still just listening to that first part because we have to turn our block loop off. We can do that again by hitting the number pad Enter. Slow this down a little bit. Okay, we're not trying to make great music here. This is just what it is. I'm using these sounds so you can all follow along if you want to. So let's put a open hat on every offbeat. So we want our edit step value to be 16. So I'm changing that with my key command, 16 down here. Got our open hat, we got the right instrument, and then we're going to just enter it in. And let's switch this up a little bit, maybe cut it short, because we want to use a note off. And there's a couple different ways of inputting note off events. One is to use caps lock, and the other is to use, let's see, I'm going to change my edit step to 1. You can use the letter A, or you can use a caps lock. And let's make this one longer, and let's put it right there. And now you'll notice when I input a new note off, it deletes the old note off. And that's because there's a setting for, I forget what it's called, intelligent note off or something, where you don't have multiple note offs for a single note. If for some reason you want multiple note offs for a single note, and sometimes you do, you can copy and paste them. And we don't need to get into why you might want that right now, but I use that sometimes. So let's hear how this sounds. Okay, that sounds good enough. So let's do option A, and we'll copy that and go down the line, hit Command P, and now it's across the whole pattern. And we can go into our mixer panel and maybe adjust these volume levels a little bit. Good enough for government work. All right, so we've got ourselves a little beat. Now, let's look at maybe putting some bass with this too. So let's go into our instruments and open up bass and make sure that we have a new empty instrument slot selected so we don't overwrite our open hat. And if we double click on these, it'll kind of play a little preview. But you have to actually load it in for it to do the preview with the instrument. Okay, let's go with this 7th house. And I think this has a phrase. So let's just turn this off, the phrase is off, because we just want the note. And we'll go back here, and if that didn't make any sense, what I did was I went to the sampler panel and then turned this off, phrases off. And we'll talk about that more in the future because phrases are super important, super useful. But for now, we don't want them. We just want the sound of our bass instrument. Let's go with A, I think. Yeah, let's go with A. Okay, so we want, we'll just do a simple offbeat bass. And you'll notice when you hit the end of the pattern that it will input. Okay, and let's shorten this up. Maybe a little shorter. Too short. Okay, sounds good. We'll select this, copy it, and Command P. Let's maybe change this up a little bit. We'll go from A to C. Yeah, amazing. If you ever want to play from the cursor position, just to hear where it is, you can do Shift and Spacebar, and it will play from wherever the cursor is located, if you don't want to play from the beginning of the pattern. Okay, so we got a little thing here. Let's name this bass. And my caps lock is on, which is fine. That's fine. And let's just get some melodic element in here. Let's check out leads. And you notice I picked a new slot and then I navigated to leads. And let's try this fuzzy slide. Okay. So we can hear that there's a glide going on here. This is interesting. This is in mono, but there's no glide value. So I'm guessing it's happening in the phrase here. So I'm going to click on the phrase, and sure enough, we got our glide value here in the phrase. So I'm just going to turn this off. I don't want the glide. I just want the note. And maybe we'll just call this melodic. And we'll do a chord here. So when you want to input chords, you can hold Shift and it will continue to input notes on the same line. So let's see, we've got this thing going in A, so it's kind of a natural minor thing, so we'll just do some minor chords, I guess. Let me change my, we can actually leave the edit step where it is. So let's just stack up A, C, E. Oh, we need to arm recording. And let's do, oh, I don't even know. Let's do. Okay, so we got something, right? Doesn't have to be good, just some sound here. But let's insert some note off values here. So let's get an A, and then let's do the same thing here. So you can see I'm just navigating manually. I'm going to change my edit step to 0, and then I don't have to go back each time. Okay? We got something. Let's make this a little more interesting, building on something that we looked at last time by using some volume commands. So let's change our edit step to 4. And then I'm going to do 8080. And so now you can hear this is kind of toggling on and off. And I'm just going to do Option A to select this little bit here. I'm going to copy it, Command C, and then Command P down here. And now it's for the entire column. And then I'm just going to do the same thing here and here. Okay, so maybe a little more interesting. So that's all well and good. This is, one way of kind of like navigating through the pattern editor. Just give you kind of like some basic familiarity with how to enter in some notes. You got to make sure that you have the correct instrument selected. Let's say we wanted to switch our bass instrument out for another bass instrument. We can go back to bass here. And we could just select this instrument and then choose a different instrument. And now it changes that sound that it's indexing. It's still indexing instrument 4, but now instrument 4 is a different instrument. So we can kind of swap out instruments while keeping the MIDI data intact, which is handy. But let's say you're not sure if you want to, lose that initial sound. Maybe you want to load in a different bass to try it, and then you decide that you want that bass, and you don't want this bass. There's an easy way to remap instruments. And this is a good seg into our advanced edit panel. So clicking on this button over here or hitting, Command Option E, when this has keyboard focus, will open the advanced editor. I'm going to just go to a dedicated view here of my pattern editor and advanced editor because there's just a little more screen real estate. You can see what's going on. And the advanced editor is pretty cool. It allows you to do kind of like group operations, batch operations. That would be kind of more tedious to do just within the pattern editor itself. First, we have this kind of like selection scope field. This tells you what the operations, these are all the operations down here, will affect. So is it just going to affect the selection in the pattern, meaning this, or is it going to affect the entire column in the pattern, whatever column the cursor happens to be in? That's the note column, or the column in the song if we have multiple patterns, or is it going to impact the track in the pattern, or the track in the song if we have multiple patterns? It can affect the track throughout the whole song. And then group in pattern and group in song is for when you have tracks grouped. So say, we've got our bass and our melody in one group. This group in song or group in pattern would now impact both of these tracks and no others, whatever group was selected. And I'm not sure if you have to have the group track selected or if it works if you have one of the grouped tracks selected. Yeah, maybe we can figure that out, or maybe you can figure it out on your own. Shouldn't be too tough to test. So let's And then also we can impact the whole pattern or the whole song. So sometimes you maybe want to add some humanization to the entire song, or just to, one pattern, you want to, flip it or expand it or shrink it. You can do that. This content mask is, everything is checked by default, but you can uncheck different aspects of the data that are impacted by the transformations. If you just want volume to be affected and not panning and delay, you would just select volume. It would be nice if you could kind of like select them all at once for on or off. That would be handy, but yeah, if wishes were fishes, we'd have them to fry. Okay, so let's look at, we talked about remapping an instrument. So let's change this bass instrument from this hollow to this crunchy saw. So the way that we could do this is by going to track and pattern or track and song. We can leave our content mask because we're going to go down to this instruments section. We'll choose our source instrument 04, which is our source instrument, and our destination instrument will be 06, this crunchy saw 06. And then we could either swap them or remap them. Swap would only, I think, really only work. Well, let's try it. See if swap. Okay, so swap works even if you don't have any of 06 represented in the pattern. But say you had some 06 in here and 04 in this track, then it would switch them with swap. But remap kind of accomplishes the same thing. Or you can delete the source instrument as well. So if we change this to 6 and go delete, it just takes them all out. So we'll undo that. And now we've changed our bass from hollow to crunchy saw. Okay. And if we want to change it back, let's just do that, remap it again. And it's changed back. Okay. So let us continue on. Cut, copy, paste. This is pretty straightforward. Again, you have to look at your kind of like selection parameter. You can cut, you can copy, you can paste. You can also flip, shrink, and expand. So let's look at what that does. So say for instance, let's select, you can do a granular selection by holding down Option as you make your selection. So I'm holding down Option and Shift and using the arrow keys. And let's go to Selection and Pattern, and then we'll do Shrink. And then you can see this just halved in length. And let's copy this over. So I dragged it and I held Command, and that copied it. And I'm going to do a granular selection again. So I'm going to hold down Option and select just this column. And I'm going to drag this over, hold Command, drag this over, hold Command, and now let's give it a listen. So shrink shrinks things by a factor of 2, and then expand multiplies things by a factor of 2. So you can, take some sonic material and, expand it. Say we want to do this whole pattern in halftime. We could just do whole pattern and hit expand. Or if we want it to be a lot faster. Ridiculous. And you'll notice that the pattern length number, this is the current pattern length, also changes when we do the whole pattern shrink or expand. The astute observer may wonder why 100 is twice 80, and that is because we are, in fact, in hexadecimal numbering. That's something you can set in the preferences. I have it set to hex just because once you get used to it, it's a little easier to work in hex. And then your beats line up on the even numbers as well. So 20, 30, 40, 20 is the second beat, 30 is the third beat, 40 is the fourth beat, so on and so forth. Actually, 40 is the 5th beat because 0 is your first beat. But I digress, as per usual. So mix paste, that's if you copy something and then paste it. Let's see if this works. I don't know if this will work in paste, mix paste. No, it didn't do it. Oh, that's because I have whole pattern. Let's do selection and pattern. Try that again. Let's copy this, hit copy, and then paste. And then you can see with mix paste, it kind of interleaved the data. Whereas if I have mix paste off and then I hit paste, it overwrites the data. So that's the difference with mix paste. Sometimes you might want mix paste, sometimes you might not. But that's what it is, in case you need to know. All right, notes. Let's look at notes. This is basically transposition. We also can mirror. You can also flip notes, which can be kind of cool if you have some melody and you want to kind of reverse it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So if we take this track, we select track and pattern, and we hit flip, it takes the end and brings it to the beginning, and the beginning and brings it to the end, right? So it's just basically flipping the data purely across the pattern. Now you'll notice that like the timing doesn't line up, and that's because of it's just taking that first line, and now the first line is the last line. So it may not sound like sounds funny, right? But sometimes that's useful. Say you have a melodic run, maybe you flip it and then you adjust the timing, and you now have some new sonic material to use. Transposition is pretty straightforward. I'm not sure what this safe mode is all about. It says apply transpose and mirror only if every single resulting note will be within the allowed range. You can experiment with that. I'd never use it, and so far I've been okay. But if you need a little extra safety in your life, I guess turn safe mode on. This just determines what instrument numbers the transposition or mirroring or quantization affects. You can usually safely leave this on all depending on what you have selected, what your selection criteria is. So we have free transpose field over here. So say we want this track to be transposed by 13 semitones, or no, we'll say 15. Just dial this up to 15, hit transpose. And now we're up 15 semitones. You can also do by 1 or octaves, right? So if we just want to drop this down an octave, we can hit 12, bring it back up, bring it up an octave. Right? You get the idea. There are some keyboard shortcuts for transposition as well. So if you have a selection and you hit Option F1 or F2, it will transpose the selection either up by 1 or down by 1. And then Option F11 and F12 will transpose by octave. So maybe you can see that shifting there. Those are very handy. If you want to transpose all the notes in a track, you select that track. You can do the same thing with Shift as the modifier using F1, F2, F11, and F12. Okay, see the note data changing there. Okay. Let's change this back. We'll do Shift F11. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Mirror is kind of cool. It just basically rotates all the, or reflects all the note data around a central axis. And you can choose the central axis here. So what do we got here? We got A, C4, E5. So if we choose A3 here, sorry, I'm just doing this the slow way. Go to A3 and then hit mirror. Let's see, we got track and pattern. We'll mirror this around A3. you can see some notes change. Sounds like Super Mario Brothers or something. That's funny. We also have quantization options. This is 100 equals 1 line. So if you want to quantize every 4 lines, you would input 400. Every 8 lines, you would input 800. But this is hexadecimal. So if you wanted every 16 lines, you would input 1000. Maybe I'll do a little thing on hexadecimal, but for now, there's plenty of resources out there to learn hex. And I recommend doing it. It just makes working in RENOISE a little simpler. So here I have this selection. I'm going to choose selection and pattern, nudge up, nudge down. Oh, it's not working. Why is it not working? Let me try that again. Nudge up, nope, no. Why is that not working? Safe mode. Oh, maybe because it's not note data. I think maybe it has to be note data. Let's try that. So choose this. See if we can nudge it, nudge up. Yeah, there we go. And you can see it nudged this up, and it also nudged up the note offs. And that is because we have preserve lengths checked. If we take preserve lengths off, well, it didn't do it. Why didn't it do it? It's supposed to do it. Oh, yeah, I don't know. There's all kinds of idiosyncrasies in this program. Maybe I just don't understand. But it should not preserve the lengths if preserve lengths is off. But I guess it is. Anyway. So you can see when you have the selection and you're nudging things outside of the selection, then it no longer impacts those notes because they're now outside the selection. And then we move them down. So that's another fun little idiosyncrasy. So we already looked at instruments, swapping, remapping, and deleting. And then we also have the volume, pan, delay effects. This is pretty useful down here. We can interpolate between values. We can modify values by setting a specific value, adding to the value, subtracting from the value, multiplying the value, dividing the value, or humanizing, which adds randomness. So let's say we want to add a little randomness to our beat here. And we want to add that randomness in terms of volume and timing. I'm just going to enable the delay columns in each of these tracks. Because if the delay column is not enabled, there's not going to be any operation. So let's see, we're going to just leave volume and delay, and this maybe isn't necessary. Hell, let's do panning too. Let's open up the panning column. I'm doing Command-Shift-P to add panning. And we're going to select the beginning here. We'll do Command-B to select our beginning of our selection. I'm hitting End. And then I'm going to go all the way over here and we'll do Command-E, and then that selects everything here. So now we want to make sure we have selection and pattern selected, which we do. We'll go down here, we'll hit Humanize, and let's do 20. And then hit Apply. So now our volume and panning and delay have all been humanized/randomized. So let's have a listen and see what this sounds like now. And let's mute our bass and melody here. Sorry, my computer sucks. So you can hear there's a little more movement, there's a little more life, it sounds a little less rigid, a little less robotic. You can, experiment with different kinds of humanization or different degrees of humanization to get, kind of a more natural sound if you want on certain things. Interpolation, this is basically just taking like a beginning value and an ending value and interpolating between them. So let's just for the sake of example, I'm going to record a new volume of 10 for that clap. And then this is 80 down here. So I'm going to do a granular selection, select from 10 to 80 or 1D to 80, whatever that says. And then hit interpolate. There's a linear interpolation between these two values. We can do a logarithmic interpolation or an exponential interpolation as well. There are shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts for linear and logarithmic, and that's Command I and Command L. Exponential doesn't have an interpolation by default. Now, this probably doesn't actually make too much of a difference in the context of this pattern. Just this clap is maybe slowly raising in volume. But if you have that interpolation taking place over multiple note events, you can easily do like fade outs and things like that. So we've got this 80 here. Let's look at our last value. That's also 80. Let's change this to 10. And then we'll do option A to just to select the volume there. And then we'll do Command I to interpolate. And then we should hear our closed hat kind of slowly fading out over the course of the pattern. It worked. Incredible. Okay, so that is a basic introduction to navigating the sample browser. And, we just haven't really gotten into instruments yet. We'll do that in a future video. But some basic navigation in the pattern editor and the advanced editor. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I hope this is helpful for you. We're going to continue on with some more beginners tutorials in RENOISE, get you all up to speed in this very fun piece of software. Probably next we'll look at the pattern arranger or pattern matrix and show you how you can take these patterns and turn them into something like a song. All right, that's all I got for you today. Keep being awesome. Make lots of music. Peace.